We are so excited to have Nedra Tawwab in the house, Nedra Glover Tawwab in the house. And we're excited because we get to pick your brain on so many things, boundaries related, and so many things drama related. You're like the go to for all of these subjects. So thank you so much for
Mm.
joining us today.
You're welcome. I'm so happy to chat.
Yeah. So we usually start these conversations. I mean, we're both therapists as well. So we're so curious about like the what makes you you part of the conversation. So we usually start by
Mm,
just saying, like, take us on a journey to understand how you got to where you are, right? Like, what made you who you are today?
mm. Well, as you know, many therapists, we work on the stuff we're working through, right?
Mm,
So for
that's right.
me, I had a lot of boundary issues in my family of origin, more on the porous side of not healthy and not inflexible enough. So, very flexible boundaries. And I remember being the sort of kid who asked a lot of questions. And my mother was somewhat open to it, but other adults would be like, yeah, girl, you cannot ask that question. Stop it.
Mm.
Right. Like, why are you with him if he won't? Like, I'm like,
Yeah.
well, what is the like I just have so many questions about this situation you're in.
Holding up the mirror to everybody. They're like, put that down.
Right. Like, what are you talking about?
Oh,
But when I was a kid, I used to think that we were just given a set of circumstances and we couldn't do anything about it because
mm,
that's how so many adults seem to be. Like, this is the life I was given and I'm just moving through it and this is the circumstance. And I would just be like, well, if you make this amount of money and your light bill is this much, why don't you just stop smoking so you can
mm.
pay just
Yeah.
very to the point, and not certainly no nuance with me as a kid. But I do think it was some questions that maybe the adults hadn't considered.
Mm.
And for some adults it was like, okay, you're talking too much and that sort of thing. So over time I learned to just listen. You just listen to them say stuff. So that was my early training as a therapist. Because they were definitely
Mm.
oversharing. I
Mm.
knew way too much. Um,
Yeah.
but I just listened. And after a while I didn't even know that listening to people was a profession. So when I
Mm.
got to college and I found out you could be paid to listen, which is a tool I've been using for so many years, I was like, sign me up. So, like, put my name on the roll book. Like,
Um,
I want to do this thing.
mm,
So I started learning how to be an effective listener because I wasn't an effective listener. I was just a listener. I was a, ill equipped advice giver. And
mhm,
so I started learning some tools. And I say, I tried a few different things out in grad school. I thought I wanted to go the more macro way and do like nonprofits and grants and all this stuff. And I had an internship, hated it. I was like, oh my gosh, this is too much stuff. I want to work with the people.
mhm,
And I got another internship that was one on one. It was in a teen runaway shelter, lots of family
mm,
issues, lots of dysfunction and boundary issues. My very first client was this teen girl in an incestuous situation, and that sealed my fate as a therapist. Like,
mm.
listening and being there and supporting her, I was like, oh, I can do this forever, or whatever the forever of this career is. So
Mhm,
I feel like this career chose me. I didn't choose it.
mm,
I'm so struck by the emotional intelligence of you as a child,
mhm,
seeing patterns and speaking to them in a way that, was upsetting to the people around you, but you also just sort of intuitively realizing I need to pull this back because I can feel that it's making them uncomfortable and they're maybe not ready to process what I'm
Yeah.
bringing to the surface for them. Like, you did that as a child. I feel like most of us didn't have that.
Well, I didn't have any tact when
Mm,
doing it. I think I
right.
was.
Who does as a kid, right?
Yeah,
Just
I
say the
probably
thing.
was doing it in the most inappropriate way possible, like very aggressively, like, because I just saw a lot of adults who
Mm.
weren't managing their situations in a way that maybe I read in a book or saw on Oprah, or I had language to be like, this person is an addict, this person
Mhm.
is an alcoholic, this is molestation, that is not your boyfriend, he's too old. Like I just knew these things, but it was like
Mhm.
the way I was saying them,
Mm.
it probably did not come out well, but the language and the ideas were sort of there.
Mm.
It's confronting.
Mhm.
Yeah. And so do you feel like there were, you know, things that you already understood early on about boundaries being violated because you were seeing them on TV, because you were reading different things that you started to feel compelled to speak to, I don't know, in some of those environments that you were working in early on?
Absolutely. And I would say, a lot of my own boundaries, like I've
Mm.
had
Mhm.
to manage how to speak my truths to people and how to allow them to have a preference and also honor my own preference. I
Mhm.
think for many of us, we are talked out of having about boundaries that could be very appropriate.
Yeah.
Mm.
When I think of women sometimes, I asked my husband one day, I'm like, do you ever get scared when it's dark outside? And
Mm.
he's like, no. If my husband is not home and I have to go in the basement, I turn into an 8-year-old.
Mhm.
It's like, oh my gosh, I can hear the furnace. There's a man down here to get me. I'm like,
For real
someone's
though.
gotta get me.
Yeah.
But just that the boundaries as a woman that we have to have
Mm.
around physical and
Mhm.
sexual safety
Mhm.
Yeah.
is, something that I had to learn early,
Yes.
which most women do. Like, you don't do this, you can't, no one's teaching us, like, hey, no one should violate you. It's
Yes.
not about what you wear. It's not about where you're at. It's not about if you had a drink. It's about, hey, this shouldn't happen. But,
Mhm.
just the boundaries that we have to learn early on and be able to implement for ourselves, it
Yeah.
is a crucial thing.
Mm. I was just thinking how I was just talking to my partner the other day. I have a little girl who's 4, just about 4. And I was saying there's this thing that's been going around on TikTok that I'm obsessed with, which is like these older women teaching younger girls remember like the Miss Mary Mac, the hand slap thing, but the thing that
Mhm.
I wish I could remember exactly what it is, but it's basically like you're not responsible for making men comfortable, for
Mm.
keeping men comfortable. And it's like you're
Mm.
not responsible for like basically like creepy guys. Like they say like you're not responsible for like keeping the creepy guys comfortable. And they're teaching these little girls this chant. And I'm like, where was this chant 20 years ago? This is amazing.
Mm.
But it kind
Mhm.
of speaking to what you're saying, we didn't teach girls that. It was just like, you got to
No.
protect yourself, keep yourself, don't wear that thing, don't do that thing, don't walk down that alley versus being like, this is just not acceptable behavior, period.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
should be able to show my little belly button with my little short skirt. Like,
Yep.
that's what that little 14-year-old body was for.
Mm.
Right.
Like,
Right.
it shouldn't have to cover up. You know how,
Hmm.
yeah, I should be able to wear stuff like that. But to have
Hmm.
to consider, like, oh my gosh, if I do this, then that, just, all of the things that we must learn to be able to exist. And even when we know those things, how we're
Hmm.
still violated, it's really important for us to talk about what those boundaries look like. And like you said, like now there's so much conversation around, like, it's not you, it is this perpetrator, right?
Hmm.
So it's not your fault, and that's not the messaging that was given to us when we were younger, and some people still aren't getting it,
Right.
unfortunately.
Mm.
Yeah, I'm so struck by I think Vanessa and I talk a lot about self-abandonment and where that originates. And I think there's
Mhm.
so many ways that we learn, especially as women early on, to really manipulate situations and relationships, a lot of times to keep ourselves safe, as you're
Mhm.
speaking to, right? Like I think there's so many ways that it's like, don't do whatever around Uncle so and so because he drinks and,
Mhm.
things could whatever. It's not even like necessarily explicit things that
Mhm.
were spoken. We just got the messaging that there's something
Mm.
you need to do to minimize yourself. And I think there's so many ways that we are really conditioned early on to not say the thing. This makes me uncomfortable. I don't want you here. I don't want to not wear a swimsuit, whatever it
Yeah.
is. But
Don't touch me. I
Yeah.
don't like that. Yeah.
yeah, and it continues into our adult relationships. And
Mhm.
then I think there's just often such a lack of intimacy that's gone on for years because that's just what we learned so early is how to like manipulate other people and situations to keep ourselves safe. Um, and I'm
Yeah.
wondering, like, as we talk about boundaries, Nedra, what do you think are some of the misunderstandings about what boundaries are? Because I find a lot of times
Mhm.
boundaries are really like misunderstood as like walls and
Yep.
cutoffs. There's a lot of cutting off that happens
Yep.
in families when we attempt to start to set boundaries, right?
Mm. Yeah, I think the cutoffs are happening because people are unwilling to allow confrontation.
Oof.
Mhm. Mhm.
And when you shut down the ability for someone to talk to you about who you are and how you may have impacted them, it can be really hard for a person to continue to exist in a relationship with someone who won't have any accountability for what they did. Sometimes for you to exist in a relationship where someone is trying to gaslight you and make you think that what happened didn't really happen,
Mm.
Mhm.
that questioning of self in a time where you are trying to reclaim yourself. You're trying to acknowledge your voice. You're trying to, make sense of your story. And you're in these relationships where someone is saying, no, no, it didn't happen like that. That wasn't that. They meant this, all of that stuff. It can be very hard. And so I do understand why people choose to cut off family members. Is not always the necessary decision, but certainly sometimes it is.
Mhm.
Mm. Felt that in my body as you were saying it. I think
Mm,
there's I don't know, there's something in how much of a misunderstanding there is. I find, especially like, I don't know if this is true of several communities, but definitely in the Black community, I hear a lot about like, that's your mama. Like, you
mm,
don't, you don't not speak to your mama. And I often say, I've never known someone who stopped speaking to a family member without a pretty substantial reason behind it. So I don't
Right.
know. I don't want to make assumptions, but I think that that's not something people speak to a lot. Like how difficult it is to be in that space of exile a lot of
Mm.
times from our family members when we realize I can't like thrive and like become the person that I am meant to become in these family dynamics. You know what I mean?
mm. I remember reading a book. Oh gosh, I must have been in high school. And at that time, I was really down urban fiction path. And there was this
Mm,
book by Iceberg Slim. And the book is called Black Mama Widow.
Mm.
mm,
And it is about the negative impact that this mother has on all of her children.
Mm.
I think most of them in this book maybe die in some tragic way, and one of them lives, but is just a very scarred and fractured person. Um, and I think sometimes we think like, oh, self help is where you get the message. I got the message in Mama Black Widow
Mhm.
that there are parents
Mhm.
who will pull you down, not even intentionally,
Yeah.
but as a byproduct
mm.
of their damage.
Yes.
Yeah. It's a byproduct of the
Again, you're
damage
saying
and
a lot of things I'm
uh-huh.
feeling in my
And then
body. Like,
just
whoa.
a total inability or I guess I'll leave it at inability to, look at that damage, right?
Mm.
To even, like, turn that rock over sometimes.
Yeah, people can love us and not know how to care for us.
Mm.
Mhm.
And in families, it's often, well, I love you. And there's this simultaneous hurting
Yes.
happening, right?
Yes.
This pain inflicted. And so we start to think, well, they can't
Mm.
be hurting us. Like that hurt must not be real because they love us, because those things can't coexist. Oh, yes, they can. They
Yeah.
Mm.
can love you and not care for you. They can love you and harm you. So, love
Mhm.
does not mean that people will treat you well. Maybe it should mean that, but that is not always the case, particularly in families. And so we start to, when those family relationships are like that, oh, buddy, get ready for the world.
Mhm.
If those family relationships are like that, what do you think those friendships are going to be like? What do you think those
Mhm.
partnerships are going to be like? What do you think your relationships with your children? Oh, coworkers, everyone else is going to get a little bit of that damage if you don't work through your stuff.
Mm.
God,
I'm
it's
like, I
just
could
like
go 5
reverberating.
directions. I'm watching you think
Well,
today.
yeah, like just that statement kind of took my breath away that
Yeah.
people can love you and not care for you, because that's so real. And these are the types of things that I think people don't talk about very often. In depth psychology, they talk about it in the context of the deaf mother archetype, which is, I
Mhm.
guess, this Black widow. I'm like writing that down because I want to go read it.
Mhm.
But I think this is especially something Vanessa and I've talked about with mothers and daughters, that there is a way that, like, daughters will experience a sense of contempt from their mothers as they start to thrive or heal or, um, move
Shine.
away from whatever that can just feel like debilitating to attempt to stay in relationship with this person that you love so much. And I can feel your lack of care for me. I can feel
Mhm.
your like wanting to like
Mhm.
pull the life out of me. Um, and I think it's really confusing because that child within us still desperately wants to be loved by that mother and knows I can't breathe here. I'm
Mm.
suffocating in your love, right?
Mm.
Mm.
Yeah. I am suffocating in your love. Your love is hurting me.
Mhm.
It is not helping me. And I think of, this thing that most parents will say to their kids, I just want you to be happy.
Mm.
My happiness might be apart from you.
Oof.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
make me cry.
Well, and my happiness might also be confronting to you.
Mm,
I think we
mhm,
get that message a lot. Um, I mean, I know I did growing up, but it was like, I just want you to be happy. But the underlying message is, as long as it's within these parameters and as long as it
mm,
doesn't hold a mirror up to me in any way.
mhm,
Because the second that happens, then your happiness doesn't top priority. Your happiness gets bumped down that ladder because my self
mhm,
preservation needs to come first. Right. And I think that even as children, we know that. Like we know it somewhere, that I have to stay within the confines of like what keeps this relationship copacetic. And if I go outside of that, then there's going to be consequences. And I mean, I
oh,
know
yeah.
that, right? I knew that I never was told that explicitly, but I know that I grew up with that understanding. And I know that it trickles into my romantic relationships. I know it
Mhm,
trickles into my friendships, right? That
mhm.
like if things aren't copacetic, there's going to be payback basically in some
Mm.
way.
I remember directly being told
Mm.
that by my father because I'd said something to him. I must have been in like maybe late middle school, late elementary, early middle school. I said something to him and he got furious and he was like, "You can't talk to me that way. Why would you say that?" And my little naive self is like, "Cause that's how I felt," and I got in trouble. I don't remember what trouble was. It was probably a good cussing out,
Mhm.
but I got in some trouble. And to this day, he'll bring up, "Remember that time you said so and so?" And I'm like, I meant that.
I
I
do
think I
remember.
still mean it. Think I still mean that today.
Stand by what I said.
I'm like, "Ooh, I was so insightful."
You're like, I was good for that age, man. I had it.
Man,
Ah.
that was my best
Uh,
talk show Nedra I could think
Listen, I'll admit that.
Tell me you were tell
Just
me you
gave
were
me
called an
life.
old soul when you were a kid, because I feel like a lot of us,
of.
especially in this room, were probably told, "You're such an old soul." And now I look at that
Mm.
as like, let's talk about what that really means. Because when somebody calls a kid an old soul, that's supposed to be a compliment, but I look at that as like, I see things and I say things that other people can't see and say.
Mhm.
I've been given a lot more shit to hold than I should have ever been given at a certain
Mhm.
age, right? I'm
Mhm.
far too air quote mature than for what I should be at this age. And I think people say that the stuff to us like it's such a good thing. And now I look at it and I'm like, that's not a compliment. That's not a compliment.
Mhm. Oh,
Mm.
I remember being told, oh my, now by countless family members, you're the only person your mother will listen to. Well, I'm
Mm.
10. I'm 10.
Same. I got told the
So
same shit. Yeah.
I
Wow.
don't know how I am the only person that she will listen to. Like, you're
That's a
57.
problem.
Same shit happened to me. Oh my god.
10-year-old children should not be leading.
I should not have been leading the village,
Yep.
Yes.
but I was certainly told that by, multiple family members, like, you have to
Mm.
talk to her. You're the only person. I'm like,
Mhm.
me?
Mm.
Mhm.
I can't even drive. Like, I
Mhm.
can't, I don't want this responsibility. But, I took it.
Yeah.
I took it. And I would relay the message of whatever that thing was, like, all right, girl,
Yep.
so this what they saying, you
Yep.
know. But yeah, a it's not an honor to be in that
Mm.
position, because what happens is you become the person who is listening so well that you're not listened to.
Mm.
Yes. Amen. Mm.
And reclaiming that part of yourself that needs to be heard. And that's for all
Mhm.
therapists, because therapists, we get in this mode of, I'm the problem solver. I know, I have an opinion. I can CPT my way through this. I know the right answer. And it's like, listen,
Mm.
we are not a therapist in our personal lives.
Mm.
Mhm.
We are humans and we have experiences and we need people too. We are
That's
not,
right.
I don't always want to be the go to. I want to be a go to at work, but when I get home, I need to be held and able
Mhm.
to share and call my friends and talk and share and let these things out. I don't want to be the container in all spaces, because I
Mm.
think of it as, putting some acid in a jar and shaking it up, and that little baby will just pop right off.
Mm.
So I need my own space to be able to be a full human. And so for many of us you are mature for your age, you're so wise, your parent listens to you and all of this sort of stuff, it creates the sort of individual who has to struggle with figuring out how to share themselves with other people, because their
Mm.
experience in the world has been that of being there for other people and not being
Mhm.
there with people.
Ugh.
Mhm.
Yeah, building on that, there was something you were saying about your dad that really struck me about, I think we're a generation that were raised by parents a lot of times that would talk about like you respect your elders and that you need to respect your parents. And I think the word respect is kind of an interesting word when you really break down what respect means, because a lot of
Mhm.
times as my adult self, I will see behaviors. And I think you talk about this a little bit when you talk about like drama in families where it's just like, I don't respect the way that you're showing up in this life right now. And I think
Mm.
that can
Mm.
be hard because it's like, maybe some of the people in our family aren't doing a lot of work to understand their patterns and understand they don't have a lot of tools. And yet, it's that thing of like you go home and people just see you the way that they've always seen you and expect you to kind of slide back into those roles. And what does that look like as an adult to attempt to be respectful of the elders, the people in your
Mm.
family that you love, but also there's a lot about the way you're showing up that I frankly don't respect. You know what I mean?
Mm. Well, sometimes I think these elders are not eldering like my grandmother.
Oof,
My
that part.
this eldering is not equal. This
Mm,
eldering is looking very different
mhm,
than what you're wanting respect for.
Mm,
The first thing with respect is you have to be a person who deserves to be respected.
that's right.
mhm,
What people are saying when they say respect is, I want to be obeyed and
mhm,
unquestioned.
That's
That's
right.
very different than respect that you've earned. We
Mm,
don't even have to tell people to respect us when we've earned the respect. It's just something that happens. Go watch a good teacher in a classroom. Do you think that that teacher has ever said, respect me, kids?
mhm,
No, she
mhm,
has not. He has not. But what has probably happened is they demonstrate a level of care, of being boundary, of being honorable to the point that the kids naturally respect them.
mhm,
yes.
We're not always seeing this with elder family members, but there is this idea that, hey, this person that you saw, yelling and screaming yesterday, respect them. What?
yep.
This person? Oh, okay. I gotta respect them. So sometimes they're not doing the things that humans would naturally respect in another person, but they
Mm,
do want to be obeyed and
Mhm.
unquestioned.
That's it.
yeah. Well, I'm sitting here thinking, okay, so now we're adults, right? I mean, it's one thing you come out of childhood and these are the kind of screwed up messages that you get. And then as an adult, um, going back to this idea of self abandoning, because I feel like one of the questions that we wanted to talk to you about was this feeling of like staying with yourself. Like, what does it look like to stay with yourself when you're in these challenging dynamics? So now I'm an adult. Now I'm faced with whether it's trying to set a boundary, whether it's a cutoff, whether it's engaging with people who clearly have never earned my respect. And now I'm attempting to act in alignment with where I'm at and where I want to be as a person, right? And these people are pushing every button they can, and they're really trying to get me to come back into that space. I guess
Mhm.
like the question would be, what do you feel like you usually talk to people about like staying with yourself through that and not slipping back into old patterns? Because that's the thing about boundaries, right? That I find interesting in conversations with clients is because we talk a lot about boundaries being like the thing you enact, the wall you put up, but we don't talk enough
Mhm.
about this. The second half of the boundary is how you will respond when the
Mhm.
person almost inevitably tries to get you to kind of slide back, right? What are you going to do? How are you going to hold yourself in that situation? I mean, I'm curious to know kind of what that brings up for you.
Well, in a perfect world, um, when we place a boundary with someone, they will listen and forever honor it.
Yeah.
Right? That
Mm,
is a perfect scenario. In the real world, a lot of the work of the boundary is on us.
Yeah. That's right.
When you have a person who is intrusive, let's say, with your time,
Hmm.
they might just be intrusive with time boundaries.
mm,
Hmm.
And you will constantly have to say, no, it will be this. No,
Hmm.
it will be this. No, I'm not of it. No, you will have to do that work. And for some of us, we get so tired of this person being themselves that we're just like, you know what, done with this relationship. I'm done with you.
Hmm.
Now there are different levels to what we're willing to deal with.
Hmm.
There are different levels to, now I say to myself, if I'm gonna have a challenging parent, I'm not gonna have no challenging cousin.
I only got so much space in my life.
I only got so much space. I
I love
can't,
it. That's the fucking truth.
I can't have five challenging people that I'm trying.
Yeah.
Look, I have very few spaces for
Yep.
challenging people.
We got
I'm gonna
5
say,
slots.
listen,
I got
less than
1.
five. I have
I have 1.
1.5 slots. This other person only got half a challenge that they can have. So anybody else, friend, partner, dog, I listen. the spaces are taken because I only got 1.5. So
Sorry, you didn't make the cut. I have no
you
more
did not
slots.
make the cut. Now, for some of us, maybe it is 5 spaces, maybe it's 10. I'm not sure.
Listen, I think you
But
need to pull it back.
somebody
If
try,
you've got 10 spaces, we
yeah,
need to have a conversation in therapy about this. Okay.
but if somebody get to 11, you might, oh no, 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 I only got 10. So you figure out what your capacity is, because
Yeah.
that's the thing.
Hmm.
Everyone has a different capacity. Like sometimes I'll talk to people and I just, make a personal note to myself. Ooh, their capacity is different than my capacity, because that is something that I could not tolerate. And
Mhm.
then there are things that I have a capacity for that they don't have a capacity for. So
Mhm.
it's, we're not all the same. There are some things that I really care about that other people don't, and vice versa. And so we can't even look at other people's boundaries and say, like, oh, that's a boundary I should have. Why?
Hmm.
Is it even, like sometimes with people, I've heard this a lot with friends, and I just asked my little text group the question, like, how do you handle a friend who's always late? And one of my friends was like, oh, I just cannot tolerate it. And the
Mm.
other one was like, well, I will have a conversation. I said, girl, it's me. I'm going to be 5 minutes late.
Mhm.
Okay. Not too late, but I will be about 5 minutes late. And I said, you know what? I generally don't care about people being late as long as they show up. Shoot me a text. Now, what I will say to you is just send me a text so I can sit in my car, or, if we're me,
Yeah.
just there's other things I could be doing. So just let me know you'll be late. I don't really care about that. So we all have different levels of this is a no for me. This is
Mhm.
and then I don't care. So
Mhm.
sometimes with boundaries, what will happen is we will try to take Vanessa's boundary and say, oh, this should be my boundary with my mom. Well, you have a whole different history with your mom. You have a whole different
Hmm.
history with your sister. Is this a boundary that you even really want to carry out? Is this a
Mm.
boundary that you could stick to? Because the worst boundary to have is one you can't even honor.
Yes.
And so that's sometimes why we're having challenges with this person respecting our boundaries, because we can't even respect the boundary. And we've put all the work that they don't even want to have on them to, oh, here's my boundary and you have to do all this stuff. Well, when they don't do it, can you uphold your end of the bargain? If
Hmm.
not, maybe not.
Yep.
With I have 2 kids, and my oldest is always like, you should give her a punishment. I said, I do not want to punish her, because you know what's going to happen? She's going to be talking to me during that whole punishment. I'm not. I can't even handle the boundary.
Punishing myself.
Punishing myself.
That is real.
I'm like, no, she is getting no consequence.
You want to uphold her consequences for me?
Do you want her to come talk to you?
That's amazing. I love
I
it.
don't want to do it for an hour and a half or whatever length of time. I'm like, no, I nope. I just told her to stop. If she don't want to
Yeah.
listen, then she's just not listening, because I'm not.
Well, and I
Absolutely.
love that you're speaking about the difference in like different people's boundaries, because I haven't really
Mhm.
heard people speak about that, but also capacity. Because
Mhm.
I find like since having a child, my capacity for some people's stuff has diminished to the point of like, I might have had time and
Mhm.
patience for this, and I just don't have
Mm-mm.
it anymore.
Danae, I have 5 spaces before I had kids. I had 5 spaces before kids. Once I had kids, it went to 1.5. I
Uh-huh.
promise you.
That'll
That
do
is
it.
the
I have
truth.
5 capacity spaces. I did full messiness. Bring me your stuff. It went down.
Yep.
It went
Yeah,
down. Yeah.
that's real.
That is so real. And I feel like I mean, Danae and I talk, we're so honest about the mothering stuff, and like how funny we think it is, how people are just so like, this is lovely and I never have any problems. And Danae and I are always like, you're full of shit if you don't. You're like, what are you talking about? You don't have problems. But it's like the capacity thing is real. And I don't think as
Mm.
mothers, we talk about the capacity diminishing. I mean, I'll tell you, I actually have more respect for my mom now that I'm a mom in that sense. Cause I'm like, of course you had no capacity. I barely
Mm.
have capacity for my own shit these days, right? Because I'm so
Mm,
consumed with her shit, right? And so then when my partner comes to me with shit, I'm like, no, you're not, I don't even have space for you right now. Right. And that's hard. So I think especially not just early motherhood, but even like that teen age too, when they need even more spaces. They're more than one
mhm,
space per person. But to be a mom and be able to have capacity for even yourself or your partner when you're over here trying to hold space for so many people. And then you're a therapist, right? On top of that, which is that's your
mhm,
job. Um, and then the social media space, even still, like that's a whole other, I mean, I'm aware of our time, but that's a whole other conversation Danae and I were interested in having with you is like you hold space at
mm.
work, you hold space as a parent, you hold space as a partner. Now you're on social media, holding space as a social media therapist. Um, and people are trying to push boundaries there left and right. And Danae and I were just, anyway, I could go on and on.
Oh, you think I'm a social media therapist, Vanessa?
Well, I mean, somebody who has a presence, you
I'm
know?
curious. What do you
What did
think
that
you're a
bring up
I
for
gotta,
you?
I gotta file that on my taxes. I haven't been putting that down.
Somebody with a presence.
You're very funny. Like I think this is very entertaining. I like it.
Holding boundaries on social media, I think is just
Mm,
it's been something that Danae and I have also talked about navigating. And we laughed at, you put a post up the other day around you can just leave. Like you don't need to, come in people's comments and write a whole diatribe and Danae and I are laughing. We laughed at that comment because we're like, oh, it's the same shit with us. And anyway, thoughts.
well, this is where some of working on myself shows up because these
Mhm.
messages that I type up to send to people, when I tell you that the ancestors just delete them from my phone and say, "Whoo, not today. Not today. Not today. Not
Yep.
today." What you will do is ignore.
Yep.
So
Yeah, that's right.
that's what you will do.
That's your growth.
Yes.
Oh,
Just
Your
like
growth.
delete as
woo.
you yes.
But the response that I conjure up is so good sometimes. Oh my gosh, it's so good that I'm like, oh, if I,
If I
ugh,
told you about yourself right now. Uh-huh.
ooh, because I don't
Mhm.
went through your whole profile, honey.
You can break it
I done
down.
got real. I've gotten low down. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, I haven't. But I think the internet is an interesting place.
Hmm.
It gives people a voice. It has given me a voice.
Mhm.
It's given, people connection to other
Hmm.
things. And all voices are not created equal.
Hmm.
I think with girls, there's a book called Girls on the Brink, and it talks a
Mm.
lot about social media and the impact on mental health and self-esteem and, socialization. And it's a wonderful book. And there has been more work around like teens and social media, but these adults,
Mhm.
the adults and
Mhm.
social media is its own crisis that we don't talk about enough.
Yeah.
The adult bullying, the
Yes.
adult belittling, the adults who say things just to get attention. There have been some times where I've responded and I've been very shocked by people saying, "Oh, I said that because I didn't think you would respond." Why would you
Yeah.
say
Mhm.
such mean and
Mhm.
terrible things? You're not speaking on this topic. You said this about this. You believe in rape. Just all of this stuff.
Oh yeah.
They haven't went through my entire feed. They've missed some stories where I may have posted something. They don't know me personally. They just all of these things that they do not know, but they have this big assertion. And
Mhm.
it's really big and it's mean. And it's like, I don't think you understand it. I'm a human being. I am not a
That's it.
bot.
That's
I
it.
am not, I'm not AI.
Yep.
I am a whole person. And
Yep.
so when you say something to another human in the name of anything else, let's say that you're fighting for a cause and you feel that I'm not, you're speaking to another human.
Mhm.
That's right. Yeah.
But you're
Thank
a
you.
nice person though, and I'm
Yeah.
not.
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
Listen.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
wow.
Thank you for speaking to that because I think especially the atmosphere has been so polarizing right now. And I know there was a while where I was just like, I gotta get out of here because this
Same.
is rough. But I think that there's a way that when people are on a platform putting themselves out there, let's be honest, sometimes in a way that is vulnerable,
Mhm.
to your
Mhm.
point, we are still human beings. I think there is a way that people can um process whatever is coming up for them around the upset sort of at people that have platforms. And I think there's a way that, I can be pretty good at like titrating into like, okay, this is like not about me unless it's something like about my child, which
Personal.
is very much like, yeah, like that level of personal. And then I do find myself like, do you realize that like I'm a human being and
Mhm.
it's pretty easy from the cheap seats with like
Yeah.
nobody picking apart your life too, to have these opinions. But I think I don't know, there's something about the atmosphere of social media and these platforms right now that has just been very like this like wounded energy of like we feel really entitled to tell people who to be in the world right
Mm.
now,
But I
and
think it's a
kind of
boundary
fascinating.
thing too. I mean, talk about boundaries. It's like the way that we are accessible, or at least it feels like we are accessible at all times on social media. I think that in and of itself distorts people's perceptions of boundaries.
Mm.
Um, like it's this idea, like you just said, Danae, it's like I get a lot of like, you should do this, you shouldn't say that, why don't you, it like there's this expectation of like you are on this platform and so your purpose is to serve me and whatever I need whenever I need it. And there's a little bit of like almost like expectation of like, I don't know if it's like a parent energy, like, well, you should be
Mm.
saying this, you should be making me feel better, and I'm like, I shouldn't be doing
I would
anything.
be okay with that perspective if I were being paid to be there.
But thank you,
That's right.
because that was
If I
actually
work for
something
you,
that somebody said, like, "Oh, you should be," we did a retreat and somebody posted something about like, "Oh, you should be doing this for free and you should be putting this out there for free." And I'm like, "Who says who? What? I'm sorry, but that's it. Thank you for saying that."
if I am being paid to be on social media, which I am not,
Yep.
even if a person does an ad, they're being paid by that company. They're still not being paid by you, the consumer. If I am being paid, if I am your waitress, I will bring
Mhm.
you ketchup. I will make sure. Oh, you got enough stuff. I'm not being
That's
paid to be
real.
here. This is all volunteer work.
Yep. Volunteer.
Volunteer work of my time,
Yep.
of my giving. And so consider that before you say what I should be doing. Now, if you want to cash at me, I might go and put what you say up.
Yeah, I might bring you ketchup,
not,
okay?
I
Then we
might
might
bring you
address what you're speaking.
ketchup. Now it's your time. Now it's your time. You done paid me to say this. Now I'm on your dime. I tell my clients that all the time. Oh, you're probably tired of hearing about this. I am not tired of hearing about nothing you want to pay to tell me.
Mm.
Not one day.
Yes.
Yep.
Tell me more.
Yep.
But you are not paying me to
Mm.
say anything. Now, if you want to pay for a little message, I got an invoice I can send you and I will put
Mhm.
the message out.
Mhm.
But if you are listening to free, I will talk about tea. I talk about my new water bottle. I'm gonna talk about my plants. If I'm talking about whatever I want to talk about. But if you want to pay, hey, you own the space.
Yep.
This is your space now.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, it's real though, and I think that there's, if we bring it back to capacity again, I
Mm.
think it's like these are offerings. These are offerings in the hopes that they are
Mm-hmm.
supportive to someone. If it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
feel that way, move it along,
Move it
but walk in
along.
Hit
class. Like you
the
do not have to
road,
follow the
Jack.
offerings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And please don't tell me why.
Why?
How are we? This is what I think every time somebody loves to send me a message about leaving.
Yep.
I
Mm.
don't even know you.
Yep.
How are we breaking up and we're strangers? How did we break up and we strangers? We don't even have to break up. Like, I didn't even have to know about this.
Yes.
But they
Like,
are in a relationship with you. You might not be in a relationship with them.
clearly,
So
it's like,
they
wait
are
a
breaking
minute.
up. Mhm.
Yeah, it's like walking past a restaurant saying their bathroom is dirty. You're not even in there. The only person who could say the bathroom is dirty are the people who go in the bathroom. Like, that's now a relationship. I
Yeah.
can't walk past a building and say, what are you talking about? That's how I think about social media. Like, you have gone so far to just, do you know what I do when I don't want to email unsubscribe? I don't send them a message and say, you know what, y'all color palette is whack this season.
Sensitive to my eyes.
It's sensitive to my eyes. Why y'all having so many shades of pink?
Oh my God.
Just unsubscribe. Just leave. Just take your little doggy bag and go home. I don't need to hear anything about why you're leaving and how you're tired of me posting books instead of, yes, what?
Mhm.
It's just all very cathartic.
Listen, again,
we get the
if you
support group.
want me, if you want me to deliver your message, I will for
Cash
fee.
Apper.
It's not gonna be no small fee, but I'll put the
Ketchup is
message
not
out there.
free, people.
Oh God. Well, I feel like we didn't even scratch the surface.
I know.
Of some of the things we wanted to get to, but just really enjoyed this conversation and laughed so much. So thank you, Nedra. But we have a lightning round of questions that we ask all of our guests.
Okay, I'm ready.
So the first is, who have been your greatest teachers, mentors, people that have impacted your journey up to this point, whether they're people you know or just their work has really impacted you?
I would like to say the people in my home.
Mm.
I didn't realize so much about children and childhood and development until I had my own children, and I've been watching them developmentally unfold.
Mhm.
It's one thing to read it in a book, it's one thing to have experienced it, and it's a whole nother thing to watch it, to see who we are before the world got a hold of us and change parts of our personality. It's quite amazing. It's the best psychological study I could ever witness.
That's the truth. Mhm. Okay, so this concept of flow, right? I mean, people have different perspectives on it, but what is it that you find yourself doing when you kind of blink your eyes and an entire day can be gone?
Entire day could be
Or
gone.
maybe a couple hours. Depends on where you rank on the ADHD spectrum.
I love how you said spectrum. It is a spectrum.
Mhm.
I think flow it's dependent on what I'm in need of at that time.
Mm.
Sometimes flow for me is writing. I could get into a little writing,
Mhm.
and I'm just going. Sometimes flow for me is getting into a group chat with a friend, and I'm just like, girl, no, I'm gonna send a voice note. I can't even type this fast.
Yeah.
Sometimes flow is reading a good book. It just means for me different things on different days and being in tune with what that need is.
I love that. What is your soul need in that moment? I love it.
Yeah.
And what breaks your heart?
What breaks my heart? People who can't acknowledge the harm that they caused others. I've seen it really impact their life and relationships in a way that it doesn't have to.
Mm.
And it's very sad that they can't allow that level of ownership.
Mhm.
Yes. Ooh, agree
Oh,
with that one.
yep. Both feel that one. And then the last
Mhm.
question is a doozy. What's your favorite food?
Mm.
I like the serious contemplation.
Pasta.
I
I
know.
know. It's like it's pasta. It's fettuccine, it's linguine, it is penne, it is squid, it is all the
All the
pastas.
pasta. I'm not
All
Um,
mad
the
at that answer.
pastas.
all the pastas. I go to the there's a farmer's market I go to, and they sell fresh pasta, and I'll
Mhm.
buy just different types of pasta. The ones that are not quite lasagna, but it looks like lasagna. I always get the name mixed up. Ravioli, and I will buy them and I freeze them. And it is quite delightful discovering a new recipe to make. Ugh. Someone said to me, like, you should start making pasta. I'm like, why? I go to the farmer's market and they make the fresh pasta. Why do I need to buy a machine? It's fresh. It's right there.
Listen.
But
Like a
it's
woman.
so delicious. So favorite meal, it's something with pasta and a sauce.
Mm.
Mm. Well, in that same vein of delightful, I must say, Nedra, I think you go to your page and you get certainly a sense of how brilliant you are, how much wisdom you carry, but you would never know how hilarious you are. So I feel like it's been such a gift just to sit with you for an hour and experience that. But all jokes aside, thank you for all that you are putting out into the world in terms of support. I know that you are just having such an incredible impact on so many lives, and it's really an honor to meet you. And thank you for coming on and sharing some of your wisdom with us.
You're welcome. I get that often about humor because people see me as so serious. I'm talking about
Mhm.
these serious topics. And so people are like, oh, you're like this. And then they talk to me and they're like, oh, you're a goofball. I'm like,
You're never
yeah, girl, I'm a goofball. I love a joke. So yeah,
Aw,
it's nice to be both.
It
yeah.
is. It
Yeah.
is. Well, for those listening, we'll link all the books, and we don't even need to. People know who you are, but we'll link the books. We'll link your Instagram. Set boundaries, find peace, drama free. You got a lot of stuff out there. It's good stuff. We love it.
Yes, yes, yes. Well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Nedra.
Thank you.